and I informed Tyrone of that decision this morning. All of us had great expectations when we sat here 3 years ago, and in a number of ways, Tyrone has been an excellent fit and a great representative of our program. He personally has displayed impeccable integrity and tremendous character, and his players have represented themselves off the field in a first-class manner. In addition, our football program under his watch has never been stronger in terms of academic performance. We simply have not made the progress on the field that we need to make, nor have we been able to create the positive momentum necessary in our efforts to return the Notre Dame program to the elite level of the college football world. We will immediately begin a national search for a new football coach. I don't have any particular parameters in mind other than identifying an individual who can lead Notre Dame football back to the sustained level of excellence that everyone associated with the university and the program wants and desires. Questions?
Can we ask you to use microphones so that people can hear?
Kevin, who will coach the bowl game, and is Notre Dame still going to the bowl game?
That the bowl game decision has not yet been made, and I would suspect we will have a response to that question later this evening, to both of those questions, actually.
Kevin, I mean, what was it, about this decision, or how should I ask this? Why 3 years, I guess? It's only been 3 years. Did you feel like 3 years was enough time to give him to see where this program was headed?
Terrence, I think the best way I can respond to that is there's very high expectations, competitive expectations relative to Notre Dame football. I think everyone in the room realizes that, and we just were not meeting those programmatic and or competitive expectations on Saturday. However, I think I need to say, as I was thinking about it this morning, from Sunday through Friday, our football program has exceeded all expectations in every way. I just indicated in the statement, academic performance is at a fever pitch. It's never been better. Tyrone has done some wonderful things, but again, on Saturday, we've struggled. We've been up and down and sideways a little inconsistent. I think the program's closer than when he arrived. I think we were making progress, but in my view, Terrence, with the view of the university, we just didn't make enough progress.
Dr. White, you obviously, a two-part question here, you obviously have, I'm sure, some sort of a plan B when it comes to the coach for whatever circumstance, even if the coach was successful. Have you talked to anybody on that list from plan B, number one? Number two, when it said the university made the decision, who specifically made this decision? Was it your call alone, or was it the Board of Trustees?
I would say, let me respond to question one. We haven't done a thing in terms of the search at this point, and I think that's what you're referring to now. We haven't even begun, haven't lifted the phone up at this point. Been really focused on our team and our coaches, and obviously conversations with Coach Willingham. So that will happen here shortly. The decision was made by the university senior leadership, and in concert with the university senior leadership, I participated in a round of discussions, and Coach Willingham was aware of those conversations as we proceeded.
Would that senior leadership be the Board of Trustees, or does it go as high as Father Malloy and stop there?
Well, I think it's fair to say I report to the president, and at the end of the day, I serve at the will of the president at the University of Notre Dame. So Father Malloy and select officers tend to make most of the policy decisions relating to all the different entities at the University of Notre Dame. I had an opportunity to fully participate, as well as some participation with some participation of select leadership trustees as well.
When Bob Davie was fired, I think you said at the time that you had warned him early in the season that his job was in jeopardy. Was Coach Willingham ever warned that his job was in jeopardy?
I would say that Coach Willingham and I had not had those specific conversations, and really waited until the end of the season to sit down and have have kind of a program evaluation conversation. And we began that conversation, I would have to say, on Sunday.
And how big a factor was the fact that not only was Notre Dame losing games, but they had a number of real blowouts that the program hadn't seen in such a short span, I think, in the history of the program? Was that a big factor?
I don't know that I can point, Tom, to anything in particular. I think as we put it all together, as I said pretty carefully in this statement or this release, we just weren't, I don't think, manufacturing the momentum, the progress that we felt we needed to have to move this program back to the elite. That's not a negotiable position at Notre Dame. Football is very important to this institution. And I think everybody in the room realizes that, understands that, and competing at the highest level is of the utmost importance. Let me move around. I'll come back to you, Terrence.
Dr. White, Greg Carroll, WSBT. I talked to you about 3 weeks ago or so in Knoxville, and you basically told me that Tyrone Willingham, you were behind him 100%. What specifically changed in the last 3 weeks?
Greg, I anticipated that question, and I really anticipated it from you, and I understand that. Let me just say this, and it is a sobering moment, but let me just say this, that I'm going to be behind every one of our coaches till they're no longer our coaches, and that's the way I think it needs to be done, and I think that's what our coaches expect and deserve, and that's what our student athletes expect and deserve. And so, I do feel we've made some progress. As I've tried to articulate that in a statement, just haven't made enough on game day. Have made great progress everywhere else around this program. In a lot of ways, this program hasn't been as healthy in a long time. We've got to find a way to get back to the elite, and that needs to happen on game day.
Can you confirm or deny the reports that Tyrone Willingham may have talked to a school about, maybe a Washington school, for example, maybe a head there? Can you confirm or deny those reports?
I can't. I really can't. Coach Willingham is an outstanding football coach. He's got, as I said, an impeccable reputation. My sense is there will be many suitors looking for Coach Willingham here in the near term. I don't know what his intentions are at this point. You'll need to ask him those questions, but he'll have plenty of opportunity. He's a heck of a football coach, and I think he's an even better person, and I think everybody in this room would agree with that.
Kevin, most recruiting analysts declared Notre Dame's recruiting class last year as substandard, and it's been depicted as substandard up to this point heading into the next recruiting campaign. Was recruiting a factor in this decision?
I would say recruiting is always a factor. It's very important, but it isn't the factor. It is just an important part of having an elite college football program. You've got to be successful in terms of recruiting. I think you mentioned last year, the previous year to that, some of the prognosticators suggested I think our class was 4th or 5th in the country. So as subjective as that is, when I talk about recruiting being important, I think it's important from our vantage point. I'm not sure I'm relying on everybody's vantage point. I think it's terribly subjective, and I think the assistant coaches that we have across all of our programs are relied on heavily to go out and evaluate talent and to find the best young people to represent our program.
Can you give us an idea of the reaction of the players when you and Coach Willingham met with them at 1 p.m.?
I think I really don't want to speak for them. I know you'll find them, and they anticipate you finding them as a group. But I will say a word or two. I think they were stunned, and I think they have great respect and affection for Coach Willingham, and that was apparent to me as I spoke to them.
In the process of making this decision, did you discuss with Coach Willingham or suggest to Coach Willingham that changes needed to be made in the assistant coaching staff?
We never really got to that conversation, Tim, and I think I have a history of not being a micromanager, and I don't think Father Malloy has spent a whole lot of time telling me which associate athletics directors to hire, and I haven't spent a whole lot of time telling any of our coaches who they need to hire in terms of serving as their assistants. At the end of the day, the end game is we really got to do a good job on Saturday. We've got to get back to the elite. And Coach Willingham knows how to hire a staff and put together a staff, and he's a professional. And so, no, we didn't spend a whole lot of time having those conversations.
Kevin, you mentioned the bowl game decision will be made later today. Will the players, or have the players have had any input into that decision?
Yes.
And also, between now and when you do name a new coach, will you keep certain assistants on staff to keep some continuity in recruiting and that kind of thing?
Everybody will be retained until we have a new head football coach, yes.
Dr. White, in regards to this weekend being the football banquet, will that proceed as scheduled, or is that subject to change?
The football banquet will proceed. We are in conversation about making the banquet a players and family and coaches banquet only. We'll have an announcement about that here shortly.
So it would not be a recruiting weekend per se?
It may not be at this point. We haven't really figured that one out.
And in regards to the search process, will it be similar in terms of how it will be conducted to 3 years ago?
It will be, I would like to think it will be very similar. You can't negotiate these things in the public domain with in any effective way. I think the next time you'll hear from me formally is when I'm introducing the head football coach, the new head football coach at the university. There's just really no other way to do it. Yes.
What do you think your timeline will be for making that?
Haven't even looked at it at this point. Been so consumed with the players and our current staff, and haven't even looked to the future. I think when I come in tomorrow morning, that's when I'll start to bring the staff together and figure out where do we go from here. Have not done a thing to this point. Terrence, you had asked again. I'm sorry.
Given that you hadn't talked to Tyrone in any kind of warning conversation about what was coming up, what was his reaction when you broke the news to him?
Well, he's a professional. I mean, he knows this. He knows what the expectations are. He knows them as well as anybody in this room. He's a class guy, as you know. He's never tried to downwardly negotiate the expectations. He fully accepted them when he came. So I can't speak for him, but he's a heck of a man, and he's a pro, and my sense is he knew what needed to be accomplished on Saturday. But you could save that question for Tyrone.
Did you feel like the talent was here to be successful?
I don't know that I'm prepared to dissect the team at this point and get into that, Terrence. I would have to say that I think we've got a fair amount of talent. Do we have enough talent? I can't speak to that, but I do know that we need to win more consistently on Saturday. I do know that.
But is 3 years enough time to judge that? I mean,
we obviously, the university, the administration of the university felt that it was, and we made that decision.
Kevin, in that room, in the process of making that decision, was it a matter where everyone quickly came in and had the same consensus, or was there a great deal of give and take?
I think there was a fair amount of give and take, Jack, and I think, people tend to not be objective when it relates to maybe Irish football, Tyrone Willingham, to a lot of different things. I mean, people have such great respect for Tyrone that it's really, that made it a very difficult conversation for a group of university senior administrators.
Kevin, is this a sign of a new era at Notre Dame? I think it was always assumed that at Notre Dame, coaches always got their first contract, at least the first 5 years. And now I'm not sure there's ever been a coach that has only given 3 years. Is this a new sign that there's no patience for building a program?
I don't know that I'd characterize it in that way, Tom. I would just, I think it would, if it says anything, it's an underscore of the notion that football is very important at Notre Dame. And the competitive expectations, again, are not downwardly negotiable. And I think it does underscore that whether it speaks to any new era or not, I would say not. I think we're all committed to the reality that I've already talked about.
You mentioned earlier that the players would have an opportunity to have some say about whether a bowl game is something that is in Notre Dame's plan.
I met with a core group of the seniors at 2 o'clock, and I know our seniors in mass are meeting early this evening, and then I'll converse with them again. But I did want their input, and it's for obvious reasons.
So as of this time, the players haven't indicated one way or the other whether they would like to proceed to the bowl game or
I
not?
don't think they've had a lot of time to think about it, and I think they're just kind of putting all of that together and they'll have a conversation with that larger group here probably early this evening, and I would suspect we'll have an announcement shortly thereafter, one way or the other. Okay? Correct.
Neglected to ask this as a follow-up. How much do the pressures of the outside, from the alumni, from the fans, from the students, there was a report that there was going to be a rally today at 5:30 where they were going to throw return to glory shirts back, return them. How much do pressures like that weigh in a decision like that?
I'd like to say that, all of the noise around the program has no impact. I'm not sure I can say that objectively. I think what makes Notre Dame is the fact that people care about it and are so passionate about it and so emotional about it. That's what makes Notre Dame football what it is, and something very special. At the same time, I'd like to think we tend to distance ourselves from making knee-jerk decisions and look at things over some reasonable time horizon. As Terrence suggested, if it's 3 years, if that's not enough, it's 4 years too long, it's 5 years. I think for us at this point, the university administration felt they needed to make a call. It was a very tough call. But everything matters and everybody matters, and I don't want to discount that or shy away from that response. But at the end of the day, I think we do put ourselves in a position to take somewhat of a private, reflective viewpoint and see if what we're doing, if it matches up, if it's commensurate with our expectation. And at this point, we felt it wasn't.
Kevin, nobody knows
Notre Dame, the firing of Tyrone Willingham today.
To embark on is, do you expect to try to set a timetable, or will it be a process that will come to a conclusion when it obviously comes to a conclusion?
Yeah, it'll come to a conclusion when it comes to a conclusion, Jack. That's exactly right. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's exactly right for answering your own question for me. No, there will be no time frame. The idea here is to get the very best person we can find that fits the place and has a reasonable chance to realize the expectations. Because the expectations aren't going to change.
How does that impact the bowl decision in your mind with this process ongoing?
I don't think, I think they're two different tracks, to be honest with you. I don't think they intersect at all. Yeah, the young people in our program that have earned the right to play in the bowl, if they want to go to Phoenix and play in the bowl, we're going to support them every way we can, and they'll have a tremendous bowl experience. But I really do want them to let me know that that's what they want to do. I need to hear that from them. And if they do, then that's what we will do.
Let's take about 3 more questions.
Kevin?
Yes, sir.
With the bowl bid just being accepted, why today? Why not before that? Why not after the banquet? Why not after the bowl game? What was today? Why today? What was the precipitating event?
I think we finished our discussion this morning, and I don't think it makes any sense in the world to sit on it. I think when we knew what we were going to do, then we were going to move and just do it. And I'm not going to misrepresent where I'm at with those players or those coaches or anybody else. So if that's where we were at as an institution, then I needed to publicly kind of suggest to the world that that's our position, and so that's what we've done.
Was there any thought of not accepting the bowl bid right away, or did the wave of this decision move after the bowl bid was accepted?
No, I think that I almost, as I said to Jack a moment ago, I see them as separate tracks. I really do. Our kids have earned the right to play in a bowl, and we talked about whether that made sense for us to play in this bowl. And we had a contractual obligation with the secondary bowl package of the Big East Conference, and we felt we needed to participate in the way that the contract suggested that we would and should.
Kevin, now that a 3-year precedent has been established at Notre Dame, do you expect that that will complicate the effort to bring in an elite-level coach? And also, in the course of the give and take that led to this decision, did you agree with it?
I would have to say that I've spent a fair amount of time thinking about our expectations, and I think they are realistic. And I think if I can find a professional that wants to be at the University of Notre Dame, they'll embrace those expectations. I really do believe that there are people out there that want to be here and want to coach at this place. We've got a special place. I'm not going to get into where I fell on either side of the ledger. I mean, the university senior administration made a decision. I am not prepared to break rank, or nor would I. I just think that everybody had an opportunity to participate in a process, and I think we came out at just the right place, and it's appropriate, it's timely, and I think we're going to be very candid and open about it, and that's what's transpired here.
Dr. White, the question's been asked, why only 3 years? You had a situation at Oklahoma. They were 12-22, and then in Bob Stoops' second year, they won a national title. USC was 31-29, and before Pete Carroll came in, they were in the national title hunt. Same with Jim Tressel, Nick Saban. How much of an impact did the success of coaches at those upper echelon, tradition-rich schools have in making it after just 3 years here?
I don't think we looked to other institutions and tried to draw comparisons. I just don't feel we did that at all. So I'd have to say kind of a short answer to that. I don't think it had any impact.
Even during this season, you talked about how a new coach and a new staff, there's a transitional price to pay for that, particularly here with the change in the offensive system. At what point did you feel like that time had passed and it was a question now of the program just not making enough progress?
Jason, I think we look at every one of our programs at the end of their competitive season, and at that point, we take a good hard look at have we met expectations, and if we haven't, why not? Is there some intervention that needs to take place at some level or in some way? We got to the end of this season and felt obviously that we needed to take a good hard look at it, which resulted in the separation. And that's just as simple as it is.
Let's make this the last one. Dr. White, in regards to the search process, will you interview, contact candidates while they are, whether they be preparing for their own bowl games, coaching at the next level, preparing for games that Sunday?
Haven't even thought about it, haven't made that decision. Don't have a response for that question at this point. Okay? Thank you.
Urban Meyer, how do you not ask the question?
Boy, I'll tell you, how can you be covering that team and sit in that room and not understand that the reason this is done is to make sure that Urban Meyer doesn't go somewhere else?
He's the hottest coach in the country. He wants to coach there. He has been an assistant there. He's got a team in the BCS at 11-0. You know, there's all sorts of teams that would love to get their hands on him. He's itching to coach Notre Dame. You got a team that's been bad. You don't want him going somewhere else. He got an annoyed alumni to begin with. How did I ask him that question?
That's unbelievable. I mean, none of that. Nothing that was discussed in that meeting, except the fact that the guy's 21-15 in 3 years, has anything to do with the fact of what happened today. This was done because they don't want Urban Meyer to go somewhere else.
No comment from Meyer today regarding the Notre Dame opening. I won't comment on it. Well, we know he's going to take
what a
the
surprise.
job.
I didn't hear him say I'm staying in Utah.
No, definitely not. I think the biggest break Notre Dame got here is that Willingham had a season in which you can fire him. I mean, if Willingham this year had gone, 8-2 and they had played in a pretty decent bowl game and, were pretty good, not great, but pretty good, they would have been in a very tougher spot. I mean, they had a bad finish to their season. They got blown out by USC. They lost to Pittsburgh and BC at home. I mean, it's not a difficult time to make this decision and have some basis of making it. You know what? He didn't do a good job here. Last 2 years, he was bad. We didn't play any BCS games. The expectation levels are high, blah, blah, blah. So they actually got a break. If he had had a big year this year, not a BCS year, but like a Georgia year or like a, Texas year, they would have been in a very, very tricky spot because it would have had to fire a guy coming off 9-2 or 8-3 or something along those lines.
Very
would have been difficult.
Would have taken a lot of heat. Right now, though, they're Notre Dame.
They're 6-5. You can fire them.
They're 5-6 last year. They're 6-5 this year. They're getting beat by 30 points when they play USC. They've been embarrassed. And this is about one. Now, if you tell me if they didn't have a candidate, would they get rid of him this year? I'd say odds are against it.
I think they'd give him another year.
They probably would give him another go-round.
I agree with that. Good point.
But what happened here is they got a guy who they loved, who when he was an assistant there, they loved him, who went off to Bowling Green and only had 1 year as a head coach when they were looking for a coach. And the people who were split on their board said, you know what, we can't hire a guy who's got 1 year as a head coach and who's 36 years old, 37 years old. And they said, we just doesn't have enough experience. They've been kicking themselves ever since as he's gone from 8-3 to 9-3 to 10-2 to 11-0, 38-8, running the number one offense in the United States. He's got a team that is not even supposed to be any good, which was bad before he got there, in the BCS at 11-0. And they said, you know what? The guy has dying to coach. He's got an out in his contract to coach Notre Dame. We let him go. He's 40 years old. He's running the best offense in the country. He's the hottest coach in the country. And we'll be damned if we're letting him go somewhere else.
That's what it came down to, folks. Simple as that. I mean, Willingham gave them an excuse to get rid of him because he didn't do a good job. 12-12 the last 2 years. And this idea that Tyrone Willingham is so great between Sunday and Friday, nobody cares about it. I hate to say it. In big-time college athletics, the cesspool that it is, even at Notre Dame, nobody cares about Sunday through Friday.
Hey, here's
they care
the
about
thing.
Saturday afternoons. That's what they care about.
Why even pay lip service to us? Here's what we're basically saying.
Great graduation rate, but he didn't win enough games. How he goes?
Man of great character and dignity, which no one denies. Guy runs a clean program, no one denies. Guy is a good role model for his players, no one denies. Players graduating at a high level, no one denies. You know what, though? None of that matters. We're not winning.
That's the bottom line.
Case closed. All that out the window. That doesn't keep you here. So graduating your players doesn't keep you here. Keeping your players out of trouble doesn't keep you there. Being a good person doesn't keep you there. Win the game.
No doubt about it. It's about winning. It's about wins.
It's about
Saturday
two
afternoon.
things: W's and dinero. And the W's, they make the dinero.
They take a little less of a graduation rate to have a little better record on Saturday afternoons. And, I don't want to knock White. I don't know anything about him. I'll say this, though. And he came across fairly well today. I'd be a little worried. This is the fourth guy now. He had Davey. He made the terrible mistake with O'Leary. He looked like an idiot with that resume.
Well, the first thing, that was a loaded question. The guy says, well, will the process be the same as last time? White should have said, well, almost. We're going to do a little more work on the resumes.
Then he brought Willingham in, who I didn't think he was such a great coach to begin with at Stanford. So, I'm not sure if White is really a big-time AD when I think about it.
Well, White's going to get to hit a home run here because
he can't go wrong on this one.
Folks, if this deal isn't done, you got a scoop.
Well, the question is will does Meyer coach his team in the bowl game?
That's the only question left. And how fast do they end this charade and make Urban Meyer the coach at Notre Dame?
Let him coach his bowl game, though.
So just put the pieces together, folks. Notre Dame doesn't have a coach. The hottest coach in years in college football, with a Notre Dame out, who was a Notre Dame assistant, who is enormously popular with the big-time Notre Dame alums, is available. He just took a team 11-0 to Utah. Do you think maybe they will marry up? Just a chance. You think maybe they'll bump into each other over the next week?
4:30. You want to hear the closing bell, Eddie? You do, here on Sports Radio 66.
The closing bell is brought to you by